Welcome to another episode of the Balance Growth Show. I'm your host, Travis Perry. Today we get to be in studio with Dr. B, more known as Jairo Borja. Jairo, we're so grateful to have you on here today. We're going to talk, and I'm just going to really quickly introduce you here. Dr. B is a sought after speaker, author, and consultant. He runs the Borja Consulting Group, which is designed to assist entrepreneurs and working professionals to network strategically, build quality relationships, and close more deals. Dr. B is also an educated consultant assisting with program evaluation and curriculum review of programs that assist entrepreneurs advance to the next level. He is also a real estate investor and a part owner of a 52 unit apartment complex in Southern Pines, North Carolina. Dr. B is involved in a 120 key hotel in Key Charles, Louisiana, and a 48 unit in Hickory, North Carolina. Welcome to the show, my friend, and thank you for elaborating on your expertise and just being here to help us out have better growth as we balance life.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Dr. Perry, Travis. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here, as you can tell. I'm like Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3, brother.
Let's do it. I love it. Well, it's so fun to get to know people from all different walks of life and industries, and you've got some fingers in various industries, and you've got some things going on. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit. How did you get to this space? How did you get to this point of really being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I'll start very early. Born and raised in Queens, New York. Mom and dad are both Colombian, first generation Hispanic. First generation college graduate in my household, and of course, leading by example to my younger brothers and eventually stepsisters. I uh, I come from the world of financial services, so I worked at Bear Stearns, which became Chase. During the recession, and then after that, I worked at higher ed for a large bulk of my career. So I worked in financial services, I worked in advising, and I worked in career services towards the end of my, I guess, career. Yeah. So in my last role, I was the director of business development for career services. So I would help find jobs for the students and graduates. So that's how I was able to build my network. So I would connect with a lot of recruiters and a lot of entrepreneurs to hire the students for internships or career opportunities. Then I decided to pursue my doctorate because my original plan was nothing what you see today, right? Well, my original was to be a wrestler. But that ship sailed. Then I had to figure that out.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. But then once I completed my doctorate, I was like, you know what? It was time for me to take that next step. I felt that, where I was at, what I was doing was fine, but I felt that I had a calling, I had a higher purpose, and it wasn't just what I was at. So my original plan was to get my doctorate and then teach full time. But as I was evolving in the doctoral program, I was like, you know what? I think I could give back better if I was an entrepreneur. So I started doing it as a side hustle in 2018. Started doing workshops around networking and social media a little bit before it became cool, LinkedIn. And then in 2019, I legalized my business. I registered it, and it's 2019 was a crazy year. 20 January, for one, I registered it. March, I got my doctorate. I got the seal from the CAO, Chief Academic Officer. You're a doctor. Congratulations. And then I resigned in May with no plan, no nothing. I just have
Wow.
savings, and that's it, right? And then I walked in August. I was one of the last to have a ceremony before COVID, and then yeah, and then I started my business. I was full time at that point, right? And then I wrote my first book, Networking Way to Success, in the summer of that year as well. So 2019 was a very interesting year.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah,
For so many of us, the next year
yeah,
was
exactly.
just kind of that build up. But 2019 was kind of it was a crazy year politically as well. There was a lot
Right,
of stuff going on,
right.
but a very accomplished year for you. Sounds like. Congratulations on all of that.
Yeah,
So you wrote your first book, and obviously you're big into networking. Relationships are key for you. You have a new book coming out. Talk to us a little bit about what that book is about and what was the problem you were trying to solve there.
yeah. So fast forward 6 years later, because we could just keep going and going, right? So 6 years later, I wrote this baby, Deal Maker: How to Easily Raise Unlimited Capital for Your Deals. was released, last month or month and a half, month and change, became bestseller.
Congrats.
Woo. Thank you. So the whole premise behind this book basically discusses the strategies and ups and downs or trials tribulations of me getting to that 52 unit you mentioned in my bio, right? So it wasn't easy. I always wanted to dabble in real estate to some capacity. I tried on my own in 2016, didn't work out. Then fast forward 2 years ago, I tried to do, buy a property or have a portfolio with a now former colleague who that didn't work out, and eventually I talk about the story in my book, and I said after what happened in Madeira Beach, where we were supposed to close May 31st of last year, didn't work out. And then I said, you know what? I had two choices. Either I was gonna like take my ball and go home, or I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna, find a way to be a real estate investor somehow. So I went with the latter, and then I, wound up partnering with the folks in my mastermind specifically, and then that's how I became a general partner in that 52 unit, helping raise money for that deal. In exchange, I got equity, meaning ownership, into that deal. So yeah, so the book talks about different strategies of how to raise money when it comes to networking, when it comes to finding a mentor, being in the right rooms. So I felt that was the problem I wanted to solve. A lot of folks they struggle with how to find money, and so the book kind of helps solve that problem. And the second half of the book basically discusses different strategies to how to tap into like the SBA, yeah, home equity, CDFI, cash value life insurance, 401k, self-directed IRA, etc. So it talks about ways of tapping into money in order to raise money. So
That is a struggle that a lot of business owners face is just kind of tapping into the right sources, right? Because if we're not careful, it's cash flow is what kills
yeah,
businesses.
yeah,
We talk about lack of sales, but it really is this cash flow. Cash flow is king. So
that's right.
if you have the right amount of equity and liquidity available to you, you can weather any storm.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that business owners are going to see a lot of value from that. So let's talk about what's kind of the main like talk to us about the framework. Like how does one who's trying to grow a business really dig into this framework that you provide? Talk to us kind of like where we should be looking at. What are the main points of what you're talking about in the book?
Yeah, so I discuss in the book, different types of frameworks in regards to being in the right rooms. I talk about it as an example, even as something as simple as like networking and joining specific groups like a BNI or LaTip, making sure you're putting yourself out there as a thought leader. I talk about the importance of having, I don't get into super details, but I get into the importance of that funnel, making sure you're, whether it's putting yourself out there as a thought leader, whether it's a webinar or a seminar, having, putting yourself out there as a thought leader in a specific topic. I talk about that. I talk about the role or the importance of a mentor as well. So, as an example, I discuss in the book, hey, prior to this, I was struggling, I had lost money, but then, but then I went to someone who basically kind of already done that, been there, done that, right? So the framework is simple: just find someone who's already did it and copy them, so that this way you don't have to lose $16,000 like I did, basically. So I talk about the importance of finding mentors or finding your tribe when it comes to that, right? So it's important to find your tribe or find your community as well. I talked to, like, as an example, right before this call, I spoke to a few other like-minded real estate investors. That motivates me, or we motivate each other. So they're going to help me with some deals and vice versa. And then from there, we're all part of the same community, so we'll kind of motivate each other there. So yeah, so my framework, it talks about that a lot. It talks about the importance of finding a mentor, finding someone who's been there, done that. And this way you're just, I don't want to say copy paste, but something like that, where they've already been there, done that, and this way you'll just, uh, you want to save time, want to save money, you want to save energy, right? So I talk all about that in the book. So that's what I talk about.
What would you say is the most important aspect of your framework? What is the one thing that if I could say, hey, here's the thing that would help everything else just work so amazingly well as you're trying to grow and scale and find the money. Because networking, you and I, we could look at networking as so many different things. Like you mentioned, BNI.
Yeah.
Um, um, I run a
Mastermind.
networking group that, and like a mastermind. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
run a mastermind group for couples, and it's a totally different type of way to network. But if you were to say, here's the thing that really is the most important aspect of everything you teach, let's dive into that. What would you say that was?
I love this question because I knew it was coming. The number one important thing for everything for all of this to work is mindset. Well, two things: one A, one B. Mindset. You have to believe it, and if you believe it, you're gonna achieve it, right? So it's all about mindset. And the second thing is, for me, at least for me, understanding your why, right? That's all part of the process. So my why is my two daughters, Emily and Emma, right? So without them, none of this is possible, right? So why do I hustle? Why do I do speaking gigs? Why do I try to upstart or have a mastermind? What do I do? Why do I raise capital? Why do I have all these nonprofit clients? And it's for me to put myself in a position to one day, I don't want to say retire early. Retirement is a loose term, but at least be able to not worry about money, and then being able to help them or support them where I can, whether it's financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is. So one A, one B, mindset, understanding your why.
Let's break that down. Mindset. I mean, you're a doctor. You've done a fair amount of work.
Oh shit, that's right.
Um, let's break this down a little bit. What talk to me about mindset, and what's the right mindset to come into networking? Because I think you're right. I think one of the biggest issues for most people is like just knowing what is the purpose of coming into this, and how can they be in the right psychological frame of reference and being so that they can get the most out of their efforts. But let's talk about it. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to mindset, it's all about understanding like what your goals are, ultimately with your organization, and then ultimately understanding your goals at an event, right? So a lot of folks at an event, they think that every event is like a be an island tip where we're going to exchange cards. No, every event is different, right? A gala is a lot different from a speed networking. A speed networking is different from a traditional event. A virtual event is different from in person. So just understanding the event itself, right? And then little tips like what I do is when I'm at an event, when I want to connect with the panel, I try to connect with them in advance or at least know who their names are so that at the end of the seminar, I at least connect with them afterwards. Say, hey, great talk on blah 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 blah. Let's connect. And you'd be surprised, 99% of the time they will connect with you after that. Then a couple other things. So mindset. So knowing the type of event. Number two, knowing that specific strategy. Number three, being able to have a system, right? So you could have all the business cards and all this, all the fancy stuff in the world, but if you don't have a system, they're gonna fall through the cracks, right? So you have to have a follow up system. You're gonna have to, leverage whether it's a CRM or something like it, where you'll be able to get alert to say, hey, call Dr. Perry, right? Call Travis. So having a system in place, and then having the actual elevator pitch, right? So everyone has a different version of it. I kind of coach that as well. So I coach like, hey, so I'll make one up, right? So as an example, hi, my name is Dr. Harold Borja, and I help folks make double-digit returns, or double their money in 5 years, backed by real estate. And I do that through syndication. So that you don't have to deal with tenants, toilets, and trash. So that you could sit back, relax, and let us do all the work. Why us or why me? Because I'm backed by Mike Healy. He has over 25 years of experience in multifamily and hotels, and I have over now 6 years managing a business, and of course 2 years in real estate. And I invite you to, you know, a cup of coffees. Boom, done. I just did that on the fly, by the way. So something like that. So it's important to have the elevator pitch kind of tight, and then and having some type of call to action. And then a lot of folks get stuck with the how do you carry a 2 to 5 minute conversation. So this is the framework. This I did share in the book in both books, right? I talk about the Formea method, right? So family, siblings, married, this and that, married, divorced, siblings, right? You have finding the commonality there. occupation, right? Which could be like, hey, working in a similar industries. You're an investor in Airbnb. I'm an investor in multifamily. There's that commonality there. Occupation, recreation. You know, I like to walk. You like to walk or to run. I like to run. So finding that commonality in recreation, motivation. That's a little tricky, but understanding your why. My why could be my family and kids. Your why also finding that commonality there. Education. You have your PhD. I have my DBA. So there's that commonality there. And then achievement, right? So you have a podcast or a mastermind. I have one that's off the ground in beta, but it'll roll out more in the next month or so. So finding that commonality there, right? And then so by doing that, at the end of the conversation, when you go to CRM, you could say, "Hey, Dr. Travis is a Yankee fan or a Met fan," and then you bring that up during that next meeting. So, formation method, elevator pitch,
I love
mindset,
it.
and knowing what type of event you will succeed. You should be able to succeed.
So what would you say is knowing the type of event? There are just like there are so many events. Like we talked about, like BNI, there's
Yeah,
masterminds, there's I've been a part of
conferences.
so many networking things over the years. And quite honestly, many of them were quite a waste of time because I think people are coming in with the wrong mindset. They're
Yeah,
coming in with, "Hey, here's my elevator pitch,
right.
and I
Yep.
want you to send me something before I
Yeah,
send you." And like, it's a very scarce mindset.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So maybe walk through like how does your mindset different from others coming into those events? Like, what are you thinking,
Yeah.
and what should others be thinking as they come into these events?
I see, and I, no, great question. I coach this with my team, and I coach it with my clients, and now on the show, right? So I think it's important for everyone to think about a servant leadership mindset or servant mindset, right? So come in there and say, hey, my goal was to meet 10 people, all right, and coming in with a servant mindset. So what does that mean? So not instead of you asking for referrals or asking for the sale, how else can I help, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a two-way street when it comes to that, right? And then number two, so that you don't waste time or they don't waste time, I would say, think about this exercise going back to like marketing 101, like understanding who your ideal avatar is or buyer persona. So once you have that clarity as far as who they are, where they live, how much they make, what they do, how do they consume their news, right? Once you understand that, then you would go to organizations that your ideal avatar is at, right? And then that makes sense, right? And then this way you'll be able to connect with those individuals and vice versa and help them vice versa. So again, having clarity as far as your avatar, knowing where they hang out, going to events where they hang out, and then like, at the end having that servant leadership mindset. All those four things, the three things I mentioned, whatever it was, I think it'll help you in the long term for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the anybody that's done their work in networking know that it's a long-term game, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
might get some short-term wins, but
oh yeah,
they're the
oh yeah.
people that show up to the BNI. They'll be there for a few weeks, get some referrals, and they'll leave and they'll never come back. And
Right.
they miss out on like long-term relationships.
Yeah.
So I love this idea, this servant leadership as you lead with that. Um, and then, once you have the mindset and you've got a pitch, talk to us like what are the couple ways that you would suggest like this is a good pitch? Because there's an elevator pitch is like I cringe. Like, oh my gosh, that is so bad. And I don't want to be that guy. And we
Right.
all know who
Yes, we
did
all know
it.
one of those guys in a group, right? Like,
Yeah. So can you
yeah,
connect that servant leadership with your elevator pitch? Like,
absolutely.
'cause I think that's where the disconnect shows up in my
Yeah.
brain is like, oh, you're wanting to be this, awesome networker, but you're also showing up with your elevator pitch where it's all about you.
Mhm.
So how do you fix that, Dr.
Yeah,
B?
so basically that second sentence, like I help people make double-digit returns, and or double their money back, in 5 years back by real estate. So you're always, that's how I open my line with. So it's all about adjusting your elevator pitch to that, and then what you want to do afterwards, that third line, and I can send this to you if you want. I have a framework for it, so you can share with your audience. It's all about, um, you know, the challenges that folks may have, and then why are you the solution, right? So why, it could be that you've been burned in the past, or in my case, oh, you don't want to deal with the tenants anymore and toilets and trash. So then the challenges is, hey, you're working day to day, you don't want to you're working all day. You don't want to deal with phone calls all time of the day. So let me help you alleviate that by investing passively in real estate, and let me or let my team take care of all the day-to-day stuff so that you can sit back, relax, collect your principal and interest while we do all the work, right? So, and then why us? Basically, it's all because of the Mike Ely and leaning on his 25 plus years of experience plus my years of experience as entrepreneurs, and combining those two experiences, it's a win-win, right? So I invite you guys to connect. So that's how I would do it. So I'll send it. I'll do that. I'll do that for you. I will send that so that everyone can kind of marry the servant leadership approach with the elevator pitch. So that's how you do it. So,
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, because that keeps you congruent with who you
Right.
are and how you show up to help others.
Right. Exactly.
So
I don't
many
say,
people.
"Hey, I take your money," right? No,
Right.
right. I don't do
I I
that.
do this, and this is
I do
how
it.
this is how I do it. But this is how this helps you, right? This is
Right.
what I do that helps you. It's all about them. Um,
Exactly.
Nowadays, most of the networking that I do is on LinkedIn. Most of the networking I do is on podcasts. This is why I love doing podcasts. I love meeting new people. I love seeing what's working. I never got my MBA. It's always been on my list. I did the PhD instead and did a master's in psychology, but I feel like because of my experience with podcasting, I get to meet cool people like you all the time, and I get the best takeaways of your books, and I find it fascinating. So if you could give us two or three things to say, hey, this is where you start. Doesn't matter where you are. This is where you would start. Um, you talked about mindset. You talked about, having, a elevator pitch. You also talked about a good system, but where would you start? What would be the one, two, three things you'd say, here's where I begin. If I could start all over again, or some takeaways that people can learn from right now that they could put into practice and try.
I love it. That's a great question. So if I could go back all over again, I probably would have not just jumped into the deep end of the water. What I probably would have done is I probably would have gotten a couple of clientele to equal my salary, and then once they equal my salary, then make the jump instead of just jumping. That would have been one. And number two, as I mentioned earlier, I probably would have found the mentor a lot sooner. Like I found Mike Ely, Amy Majuri, like in the real estate world, and then Chris Williams, shout out to him, and I found a couple of others a couple of years later. But I probably would have went back, and whether it's informal or formal, informal, I probably would have found a mentor a lot sooner who's been there, done that, who already has the playbook, and I just got to follow the playbook instead of just me figuring it out. It took me 5 years, 6 years to kind of figure it out, right? Just now, 6 years, I figured it out, but I probably would have went back and yeah, and find a mentor a lot sooner, and then follow their playbook so that I don't have to lose 16 grand that I talk about in the book, being able to lose out on deals, which I talk in the book as well. So that's probably what my biggest takeaway is. Look, if you're in the early stages, I would say find a mentor, find someone who's doing already what you're doing at a higher level, and basically follow the playbook. Why recreate the wheel if you could just follow someone else's playbook. So that's my advice.
Nice.
I know it's you know, it is what it is. So there you go.
No, I think there's a lot to this. I mean, I pay for coaches, and a lot of people are like, well, you pay a lot for coaching. I have. I've paid a lot for academic learning.
Yeah,
But I found mentors along the way that would help me through that whole entire process. In
yeah,
fact, most people don't get that type of learning until they get to a PhD, some at a master's level, but most at a PhD level learning where they have a mentor assigned and they walk them through, and they really are there to make sure that they succeed. Well, having a coach and a mentor is nothing different in a business sense, that you're trying to gain what they have in a very short time, but they've learned this over decades of
exactly,
experience.
exactly.
So I love talking to authors because now I can see into your life a little bit. And quite honestly, it saves me 10 years of trying to figure out the networking deal. Like,
Right.
how do
Exactly.
I figure this out? How do I make this better? How can I be a better, you know, um, a servant leader through this process and learn from you? So I'm with you, man. I think that's probably the best advice that we can give anyone is just learn from others, not try to recreate
Recreate the
the,
wheel.
the wheel.
Exactly.
One thing I will ask on that is how do you how do you use and utilize that source of a mentor and a coach and others without copying? Because there's a fine line there.
There is, that
Maybe
is true. That
maybe
is true.
talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say copy. I mean, copy is a stretch, but I would say, take a look at their framework, see what has worked, and then I would say just as best as you can, make it work for you, right? I don't want to say remix, like in music, but I would say something along those lines, right? I wouldn't say copy word for word, copy for copy, as they say, but that's what I mean by that. So, as an example, you know, I'll use I keep using Mike, but let's say I use Mike, right? So Mike Ely's big into multifamily. He's been there, done that, right? So using his framework to go from finding the deals to finding the money to closing the deal, right? So, the good part about real estate, not every deal is not the same, right? So that's another thing you have to keep in mind, right? So, not every deal or every business transaction is the same. So, just I would say using their principles, using their ideologies, but at the end, owning that, right? So, and the good part about having a mentor or a coach is that they'll walk you through it as opposed to just going on YouTube or trying to guess it on your own. So that's what I mean by that. So if that makes sense.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, we've spent some great time talking and deep diving into your framework and the things that are most important and being able to have great deals, connect with others, network. I really appreciate you, Dr. B, being on the show. If others are wanting to follow you, take your advice and learn from what you've been able to do with networking for years and years, how can they go and get access to your book?
Yeah, they could go to my either website, borjacapital.com or borjaconsultinggroup.com, and they could pick up a copy of my book and learn of some of my other services, or you could follow the Dr. B show available wherever you get your podcast and YouTube. So I'm looking forward to connecting with your audience.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your time. Guys, if you've loved this as much as I have, please like, share, subscribe, do all the things. But definitely connect with Dr. B and continue having these conversations because you never know. One relationship could change your life, could change your business. And really appreciate having you on the show today, Dr. B.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Till next time, guys, remember live life on purpose together.